Would you, how do you mean?
I just saw Crystal's note. So sorry, Crystal.
And we forgot to record. Okay, great. Um, so that's one framework that, starts at, let me stop for a minute and think. Extract value is the lower level of the paradigm. Then it's the highest level is regenerate, right? Regenerate life,
Yeah.
right? And what am I thinking of? I'm blanking now, of course, because I'm on the spot and that happens. But
Second level is arrest disorder or doing
yes,
less bad. And the third level is do good.
do good, do good. Yeah, I literally just read an article about this and cannot remember, so that's really funny. But yeah, so that would be a way to work it.
But how would you then, if you had how would you do that?
I'd invite all of us to think of a time where either we innovated something or we think of something specific that was an innovation and examine it, like what level of paradigm is it at?
Right. I actually maybe have an example that, because it's a little bit related to stuff that I am working on here in Spain, and maybe we can use that as an example. So
great. And Marcus, were you going to add something before we did that?
No, I just
okay.
Trying to help you remember the names.
Great, thank you.
What was the name again?
Of what?
The four paradigms is the name of the.
Oh, the four paradigms. I thought it was
or level of paradigms or
level of paradigms.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
So it was a project in Canada when I lived there, back in 10, 11, 12. And I was involved. It was something called Project Greenbelt, or Greenbelt Ontario, which is a surrounding area of Toronto, which actually produces a lot of different foods. So produce, food, dairy, meats, all of it. And then all the big places in Toronto would buy everything in California coming up in trucks. Because, and this is Whole Foods, this is like the chain, the biggest hospitals, the biggest universities, and all the really big buyers. They were buying from California when they just as easily could buy from all of the surrounding. This is like a banana that's almost surrounding Toronto. And so I was asked with the team to then figure out, okay, how do we do that? How do we get all the big buyers to buy foods from, around the corner instead of in California? So long story short, it was a big, long project of design research, and went out to visit from the big producers to mom and pop stores. And then eventually we just got everyone together, different rounds of workshops, and worked very focused around equalizing powers so that the mom and pop wouldn't be, would be at level with the really big buyer coming from the, off taking millions of dollars of produce, right? So, and I did that through forcing everyone to draw stick figures together. So I would have them sit next to each other, and I had provided ledgers from them to draw from. And then it was like, we know all of this. This is, so we know it's possible because it's possible to create a dynamic system of offtake agreements. There is enough product for you to be consistent in your delivery of what you need to produce and serve and plan ahead with, and so forth. So during the research, we figured out that, okay, it would be possible. We just need to pool things together. We need to figure out systems of making all these distribution channels, services, blah, 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 blah. We need to figure out what all that might look like. So we had them do it with us. So it was just big workshops, many people. I think we were like 300 people, like just dispersed in all sorts of different rooms, all drawing little stick figure scenarios together so that everyone could sort of see what everyone else was thinking. And then it ended up being set up, all these different distribution channels, services. And yeah, it ended up being a really good project for Greenbelt and for the hospitals. And Whole Foods was a little bit more dragging because they had so much going on in the US already. But the hospitals and the universities and lots
Right.
of restaurants, they started then. So that's a potential that, it was a consulting project. It wasn't me being an entrepreneur, but it was for them, it was an entrepreneurial
Hmm.
project.
Right. So if you think about the innovation brain, right, that we're using, walk us through it, right? Like, so one way I like to think about the levels of paradigm or anything that's like looks like a hierarchy is it's not a hierarchy. You could do it as a nested circles, and like extract value has to happen, right? If I eat a carrot, I have to extract the nutrients from it. It's actually core. Or I could put it on the, like, you can play with it in different ways, right? So it's not that it's bad or lower necessarily. It's just a different layer way of thinking, right? So most economic systems have to extract value, right? That's key. What would you think through if you're thinking it around a rest disorder? What would that look like if we're innovating to a rest disorder? So an arrest disorder is the idea of when we extract value, we cause all these problems, right? We're extracting minerals from the earth, we're causing pollution, we're decimating ecosystems. Okay, let's arrest the disorder. And then what happens, right? We have laws or whatever. So, what does it look like in innovation if we're like, let's arrest the disorder?
And are you asking now specifically for this project?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the extraction, I'm not sure about, to be honest, because yeah, it was beneficial for all the producers and a little bit more tedious for the hospitals and big buyers because instead, but yeah, very long story, but we ended up making these smart contracts that it was possible for them not to deal with having to deal with a gazillion people, but still only needed to deal with one nodal shopping point, so to speak. But that's a long story. So,
Right.
and
They had to get value out of it, though. They needed a value return. That's just part of the
yeah, and I
economic
think the
system.
value was very much in terms of that sense of being connected with, and everyone wanted to buy from Canada instead of buying in the US. So there was it was a more indirect value in that sense, and I don't know the long term. I would have loved to have done like a 3 years later checkup because I don't know those numbers because
Right.
I moved to Norway after that, so I don't know.
So what I'm hearing is partly, the dominant food systems break everything into little parts, right? And far away and all these other things. And so arresting disorder means let's put the parts back together, for example, right?
Yeah,
So that's where I'm trying to get at, like, what's the brain, right? What's the level of thinking of paradigm where we're sourcing from? Like, okay, well, instead of all the broken pieces, let's put things back together is arresting disorder. If we want to do good, then what does that look like?
I don't know if I'm understanding it in the wrong way because the whole project was, well, it was definitely disrupting trucks coming up from California. So some people there were unhappy with that. But it was connecting all these producers. So it was the opposite of doing that. It was all
Mm-hmm.
about just, yeah, creating this. But maybe I am, I'm just trying to get it because it was the
Yeah.
opposite. The whole project was the opposite of disruption. It was about connection and yeah.
So, what would it look like to actually regenerate life with a food system? What would our brain need to be able to do if we were actually going to show up to do that? And where would that thinking need to be located?
In terms of that 4 levels, or how are you asking?
Yeah, because the higher level then is regenerate life, right? So if we're not just trying to get value or put pieces back together or put pieces back together and reduce our carbon footprint, but we're actually like trying to build our capability to regenerate life, then what's required of us as innovators?
Yeah, and I think that's why it was so, we recognized and I don't know if this answers it at all, but we just recognized so early in the whole project during the research phase that this was going to be all about relationships. If this was going to last long term, if people were going to trust that this should work, it would have been because they would have sat in the same room as the off-takers, so off-takers and producers in the same room just created these relationships of, oh, I've met you, I trust you now, I get your side of the story. And now we've even ideated together. We came up with this stuff together. We all have ownership. We're on equal footing in terms of the solutions that we've designed. And it benefits us all because we've all been part of creating all the different perspectives that needs to go into what should be created. So, and I think that's probably obviously it's there was, subsidies in terms of those who wanted to go fully organic was a part of some of those because, and it was clearing up streams, it was doing all the stuff. That's the whole project of Greenbelt is making that whole area, regenerate the whole area. So that's kind of their thing. They want to do this to turn the whole area into organic and biodynamic farming as far as possible. So it was a lot of parameters that we worked on, but we just knew that to make this last, we need to get people together. So
yeah, so that gets to the relation. So what I'm hearing is you're building people's capability to work together into the future. Like it's not just putting the parts together, but they're going to be able to continue to evolve the system,
absolutely.
Right? So that sounds like that's a core aspect of what's necessary to actually be working towards a regenerate life paradigm. Yeah. So I mean, so that was just an example of like one of the core things I think we need to do as entrepreneurs is to really examine what we think innovation is. What is that modeled after? What is what's the epistemology about? Why do we think innovation looks like what it looks like, and who decided that's true? Right? And what are the measures of success and whatnot? And that's one of many. Right? That's one of many parts. I also think anything we try to do that wants to be regenerative has to be nested within place and place sourcing and living systems. So then, again, it's like as an innovator, how do I develop my capability to be embedded in a community of practitioners that are continually up leveling that and questioning what's work, right? Because I think another thing that's really core, and I think we run into this in all of our fields, is often it's the work that's the most relational and developmental that is not valued, right? And so why is that? And who decided that? So what is innovation in actually like a regenerative business ecosystem? Like, again, I also think it can't be like you're saying, right? It can't be one business. It needs to be, we're building the capability to build ecosystems. So, that's a whole nother requirement of capabilities. Yeah,
no,
so I'll
totally.
stop there, but
yeah, no, I agree. And I think that was that really got my brain going. And I think it also comes back to but then, how do we then start to somehow narrate and get put into and start help others image what it means for them to be part of it. So I like how Carol is talking about these different kinds of ROI. I think also in the impact world, obviously everyone knows about payment for ecosystem services. I've been involved in so much carbon credit stuff, and that's a whole other explosive discussion. But people are trying to do something to underwrite the things that go into creating the things so that a project can start, to underwrite nodal interventions that actually will benefit the entire community. but it's like, how again do you build the business case for something like this? And it keeps coming. That's why I was thinking about these things, and in thinking about, when you think about the roadmap and the strategy with everything that you just said, and so how do you produce that one pager where you sort of outline your intentions, and and which includes your demonstrated results, like what is it that people might be able to expect, and then also because this is a really important question, right? Like, how can you also talk about how all stakeholder groups will continue to invest, like thinking about all the 5 different stakeholder groups, and what is their involvement? How will they continue to invest? And what is written up in that one pager about that? So, and because everything you're just saying also boils down to at the very beginning of it, it has to be in the intention and the imaging at that stage. So then what's the languaging in that case?
Yeah, I'd love to hear what others have to say. I question the one pager, so I'll see what
Yeah,
others have to say. And I'm going to eat.
I question the expression, the business case, because that sounds like extracting value. And that may, as you pointed out, or as Corinne pointed out, I mean, that's always part of it. But from my experience and maybe over optimism, is that when you just focus on the business case, people good, can find the math to make sure that the business case doesn't work. And there's always, indirect costs that they can find to make it a good reason not to go ahead. But if you, appeal to a regenerative opportunity, that goes even beyond doing good, because the doing good happens even after you stop putting your resources into it. Then people will that case more attractive and will go for it. We can, maybe it's an unfortunate metaphor, but DEI has been argued that there's really no case to bring in people who maybe have been disadvantaged, and so on paper their qualifications are not the same, from a white person's point of view, but that bringing in people with diverse backgrounds and abilities, will actually, in the end, result in a advantage both for your company and for your community. The 3 lines of work. And I think that appeals to a lot of people, whether they innately know it's the right thing to do and that there really is an advantage, even though there may not be, an immediate profit you can point out to. But if we just talk about the business case, then it's going to be business as usual, extracting value.
No, I love that. And it's and yeah, I'm aware of a bridge building exercise, It's like there's, how do we get them over into the light? Yes, it's like
I mean, I
sometimes you
think
gotta.
it's within everybody. I think they, that they intuitively know this, and someone's just got to be the brave person to stand up and say, this is the right thing to do, and let's not talk immediately about what the profit possibilities are.
But is it then so simple as in, so Project 2025 is probably so popular because, well, part of the reason is probably because it's written, it's there. It's something people can relate to. And then the other side doesn't have an alternative. They don't have their image project of something amazing that the world should be looking like. So is it
So,
that simple that there isn't, it's that we only have the dark book? Do we need the so who's writing the other piece
well,
at the moment? Is it that
I
simple?
we'll get political, but I would argue that a lot of it, I think the book exists. It just needs to be communicated better, and might have been the failure of the last federal election. Many wonderful things were happening,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and,
No,
and
and
some
that's the whole
bad,
thing.
but yeah, but that's
Yeah. And I think that's the core of what I'm asking. It's like my curiosity is like, how do we language this so that it really can get a broad appeal, that people can immediately, oh, I want to be part of that. This is something that we should all do and be part of, So that's the whole, this is all very academic and heady and stuff, and we get it because we're in it. And I talked to other people. Like yesterday, I spoke to a designer, and I told her I work with regenerative development and design, you know, blah, blah. And she's like, "What?" She's like, "You're a designer. You don't know about." And I needed to explain to her. So regenerative is, and I tried in different ways, and I said, "Well, just imagine this. Instead of planting one tree when you're done, you know, taking down trees to make your furniture, you plant two, and then oh, so it's giving back more than you." Yes.
No, it's
So
just,
I'm
That
like,
part of it.
how do we even, you know, God, it's uphill. So how do we
It
language?
is. So couple things I'd like to offer. So you have this roadmap up, and so the lighter colored blocks are interim states heading toward an end state.
Yeah.
So if you can articulate, and I always find the word end state is unfortunate
Yeah, I agree.
because it's actually not an end, right? So I tend to try and call it future state, right?
Yeah.
So you're imaging some sort of future state, and then the road and right. So and trying to articulate what that future state looks like. And
Yeah.
so that could be the future state of what this enterprise is seeking to accomplish,
Yeah.
right? The effect that this enterprise wants to have on the world, right? And so you've got that future state, and then the roadmap is what are the interim steps that I need to engage along the way to get there, right? So that's basically what this roadmap is. And the other thing that I would offer that I think what Karen was doing was giving you some insight into applying a framework to the entity that you're seeking to develop, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I think is important to understand about every one of these frameworks is if you image that the the entity that you're trying to create is going to grow into a system of systems, right? So you're going to grow this living entity into this system of systems. All each framework is a particular perspective that allows you to look at what you're trying to create through a different lens.
Yeah.
And so the way to start, in my estimation, pick frameworks that resonate with you, look at what you're trying to create through that lens, and then pick another one, look at it through that lens. And then it's the accumulation of all those perspectives that then allow you to look for patterns that then allow you to articulate that vision because you're incorporating that visions from a whole bunch of different perspectives, right? And so then what are the patterns there? And then how does that allow me to articulate that in a clearer way? Is that making sense? So
Totally.
you don't have to, the particular frameworks actually don't matter a whole lot.
Right. No,
Um,
I love that. I totally love
if
that.
you know a half dozen of them, apply a half dozen of them and then see what you come up with. And if you know a dozen of them and you have the time, apply a dozen of them. And yeah, and then pick up a framework, add a new framework. It's just all it is a different perspective.
Totally. And
That's helpful for me too, Marcus.
I can offer an update to this question of how do you start the innovation and how you get people to think beyond extracting value. Several weeks ago, I presented a group that I have initiated beginning of the year involving the idea of being a better steward of the earth based on religious mandates. And I've brought together, and Marcus is now supporting that effort on a friendly basis. And I brought together clergy from all the different houses of faith or faith communities in Harrisburg, where we're located, and brought them together and said, this is the reason we need to be more sustainable and to raise what's happening in our community to make it we didn't use the word regenerative, but that's what the aim is because it's in our hearts. It's a biblical mandate that we have, decided to embrace as we embrace our religion. And other people might feel this way because it's just the right thing to do, but we have a strong, these people have a calling so much as that they are devoting their professional lives, to advancing religious beliefs. And what an amazing foundation that is, because no matter how diverse that group is, they all have that common foundation of the responsibility, that God has given us to preserve the earth and let it go on. And it was so that leap to, the regenerative paradigm was very easy, using that as an alignment, a common base for all of us. So that may be, that kind of a theory, I think exists in everybody and in every group. And if you can find what is common that goes beyond extracting value. I mean, the other easy one that came up, of course, is our children or our grandchildren, and that's, that goes beyond the business case. That's something much more personal, but that is a foundation to start with, to get quickly to the regenerative.
And I think what I'm hearing and what Josh is saying is he's just bringing up particular aspects of a potential future state that you're trying to image, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I wanted to suggest also, like, I resonate with what you're saying. Is it Eileen? Do I say your name
Yes,
Eileen?
that
Okay,
works.
great. Well, I want to make sure it's right.
Yeah, no, it's in Danish it would be Eline, but no one can say that.
There you go.
Eline. Okay, I can say that,
Elena.
so I'll say that.
Okay.
Eline. So the challenge before all of us is we're trying to support coming into life something that maybe hasn't existed before in our circles, right? And we have to, like, we're also live in what's in existence, right? Like, our bills are paid with what's in existence. Like, it's literally a conundrum. So I think there is this one thing about how do we language it, but I think it's also, and I kind of learned this from going through the catalytically speaking writing group that grew out of, it's someone from Carol's program who's doing a writing group. And what I realized in that was like, oh, I might not have it fully formed to say what I, but what I do is, it's kind of like if we're all, in a room with no light, right? And there's something in the middle between us. And I can say, oh, over here, it's kind of got a curve and a convex thing, and it's got some texture. And then you say over there, like, oh, over here, it's like got fur, like, we're going to figure it out together. But my job is to give it enough form that you can start to see what I see. Yeah. And then we're all, because who is an expert in what's trying to emerge? There's literally no expertise in that. It's much more about attunement, I think. And this is where, one of the core practices that I've been asking, I'm trying to get this article finished about, is like, what does innovation look like in living systems?
Yeah.
Right? Because it doesn't start with, what's the one sheet, what's the, the business case. That's not what innovation is about. It's much more about, more full expression of my essence now that I have this, like, interesting little gene thing going on here. How does that support the, the vitality, viability, and evolution of all that I'm embedded in, or not? Right? Like, that's a very different way of innovating than any of us have been trained to do. And so I'm kind of like, I think, honestly, to be, regenerative, what I'm envisioning in the future is we'll start with sacralizing, like what Indigenous people do naturally, right? Like, what is the sacred relationship that I have with these entities, and supporting their viability and vitality and evolution has to, like, my work has to support that. Like, that's what I'm imaging is the essence of innovation in the future. So who do I need to become to do that?
That really resonates. That really truly resonates. And it's also what you're also reminding me is I feel, because I'm talking to you guys, I dare to be braver than I feel like being. And I think that's because it's a lonely world when it's in terms of like breaking through all these, the language that exists, the structures that exist, and just daring to go that route. I think it's just and just go full on, like you were saying. Just I
Gives
think
me courage
that's,
to get my article finally printed too.
yeah.
It's one in a series of like 5 because it's like, oh, it's so meta. Lorena,
This
you
could be
raised
a
a hand.
series of 10,000 calls for my, if, as far as I'm
Totally.
concerned. This is so good.
Well, and I'm really interested in what is the role of livelihood within regenerative development. I think it's core, right? It's core to all of our conversations. So, sorry, Lorena, you were.
So I just wanted to add, first of all, this is wonderful because I am an architect and I'm also reinventing how I do. So I feel very aligned with both of you guys talking about. And what I wanted to add was what I've been managing to move myself from the place of feeling so lonely and nobody understands, and it's such a burdensome task, to actually trusting, and this is bringing the indigenous spiritual centerness in me, that actually when I speak from that trust in that there's a universal, like everybody wants the best for their grandchildren, right? Like everybody has a good intention inside. We just need to remind them, and that inviting people to co-create in any kind of small way to a vision that is bigger than what they're used to. It's like what I notice is that when I can come from that detached, so that I'm not, like open to the miracle and come from that place, it's amazing that people just like not used to, like so open their hearts because they're not used to having people talk to them from their deep humanity. And that's actually the opportunity, that it's simpler than we think. We just need to bring a little more of our, I want to say, spiritual and heart-centeredness and, vision that everybody has something good and that we're co-creating, that we're not, I don't have it all, but by inviting others. And so anyways, I just wanted to bring that little bit of balance that I've been moving towards, because it hasn't been easy, but I'm finding it easier from that vantage point.
That was
Tony, did you
so
want to say
powerful.
something?
Yeah,
Thank
thank you. Yeah, Eileen, I guess it follows on a little way from what Lorena was just been saying, is what I'm not hearing, perhaps I'm missing something, is it sounds like you're working with your brain rather than your heart.
No, not at all.
No,
But
because I mean, well,
it's about the languaging. I'm trying to meet the old world where it's at so that I can, but so that's my, but I think
I get that, but I think the fact you're sort of seems to be you're casting around for something to apply your will, if you like, to. And I think this would help with the languaging. If you really, I mean, in my experience, if you really love something that you want to do, then that will actually help the language, because it's not just about the words, it's also about the feeling that goes with it. And I guess I wasn't sort of hearing that in the conversation here, but maybe that's something I missed.
Yeah,
yeah, I did. Yeah, and maybe it would have been if I spoke about what my thoughts are, or what my plans are, but it's still very much it's very budding.
So here's an invitation for you. So if you can imagine or image that each framework is a living entity. It's a living entity out in the wherever those things reside. It's
Yeah.
so, you know, just, and I know you and I have spoken about your intuitive, right, work in those realms that can't be seen. So if you image the frameworks as a living being, who is speaking to you,
I love it.
right? And then go use that framework.
I'm so going to do that. I'm going to do exactly that. And I also think that I don't want to use because people ask me for business plans. I'm like, like, but maybe I'm gonna be starting to talk about vision manifestos, or it's just a different, and I think that's the whole reason for why I wanted to get the collective brain going around this, because it's like how this needs, I know there's a change that needs to happen in languaging and how it's being approached and built and communicated, and this has given me so much great food for thought. I hope it wasn't just for me, but that everyone could
Always
get
good.
something out of this. Yeah.
I found some nourishment.
Me too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Oh God, yeah. Thank you for participating. It was
Well,
amazing.
look forward to the follow-up when you have a case to actually talk about, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'd love
Yeah.
that. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just I really value this. And yeah, I haven't brought anything before, and it's just my brain is, there is a lot going on, so sometimes it's just good to have someone to actually talk to the ongoings with. And so I really appreciate it, and also just going a little bit academic in terms of the thinking about this, and then pulling it into the energies was like the perfect ending to this for me. It's like it couldn't
It's a,
be
Everyone have a
better.
good weekend.
it's a big question we're always all asking, right? Is, okay, where do I start? How do I apply this? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's probably good to talk about it then, if we're all asking about it all the time.
Yep.
So yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you all very much, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank
Warmest
you.
regards.
Bye.
Care, everyone.
Right.